think it's like 79.
You okay to start?
Yeah, start.
All right, good, good. I think most of you know Josh Grant, our IT director, and Josh's budget is on page 21. And if you look down the column for the current year budget at 401, 475, then look to the far right for the proposed next year at 402, 665, a very negligible increase, way below 1% increase. And I'm going to let Josh cover it from here. One big thing about Josh's budget, it includes costs for many other departments. So phones, all kinds of equipment which different departments use are found here, but I'll let Josh go into that.
This budget represents 2 full-time employees. We work full-time for the city. We are contractually obligated, the revenue piece. We do full-blown tech support for the entire town of Winslow, Oakland Fire and Police Departments, the entire town of Clinton, KV-COG, the Opera House, our library, Winslow's library, and every Waterville municipal department.
It's growing.
Yeah.
It's growing, and there are 2 of you.
There are 2 of us. Yeah, when I first started, I've been here 14 years next
Yeah.
month. There were 4 people in the IT department, and they worked just for the city.
So you guys both on salary?
Yes.
So the overtime, you don't
No.
have to worry about it?
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to grow. Obviously,
KV-COG was the last one.
that was the last
We took on.
How smart.
So the revenues that are shown at the front of the book for IT are not enough. We'll be taking in another 3,000 or 4,000.
Yeah, this year it'll be close to 40, a little over 40 probably.
And I think the revenues, the IT revenues on the second page say 37.5. Is that right, Josh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the towns we bill hourly, some of the agencies are a yearly contract. There's really no sort of other municipal model that we follow in determining those costs. It's always kind of been a rudimentary way of sort of coming to what that bottom number is. There really is no private arrangement we can compare it to, nor public arrangement throughout the state that we can compare it to as well. So I think we're pretty unique in terms of how we operate, at least locally here, in terms of technology.
We were kind of grilling you last year though about whether we were being fair, not to the other towns, but fair to our taxpayers, because we were spending time in the other towns and not billing enough. You ever do any kind of calculation for time-wise, how much you're spending in the other
And
towns?
we keep track of all of our, every single request that comes in. We have, an IT ticketing system. We sort of struggle, I think, coming to a number. I've sort of,
We did increase.
we increased it a little bit every year for the last 4 or 5 years.
2%, 3%, maybe we had 5%.
Yeah, 1 year we did, yeah.
What's the hourly rate we go on?
The towns that we bill hourly, it's, I think, like $75. So.
Because you know percentage-wise how much time you spend.
On things that we actually track, it's roughly 30% Winslow, 10% Oakland. We spend a lot of time in our Waterville library. They're actually our largest department in terms of actual number of devices. So yeah, I would, in the actual time that we ticket and that we track, I would say it's like a 60-30-10 split roughly. And that's
60 being.
Waterville.
Okay, so when you look at what you're making out of town, 37,000 is a pittance of the 402,000.
Well, it is the cost of one person. Well, not quite, but most of the cost of one person.
So are you at 5% now instead of 3, or as far as the more than that, where you were saying, you went from 2 to 3 to,
Percent increase?
yeah, percent increase.
Yeah, I'd have to look back at what we've increased, but we did have a 5% increase.
If we look at a lot of the costs, the bulk of the cost here is in our software support, which I'm assuming those are maintenance contracts we have for our stuff. And it's operating costs for our equipment. It's not in the time necessarily to build.
Well, I know, but we're using our equipment when we do their work, right?
You can't
We're not,
compare the
but no, when we say like hardware service repair, that's not fixing Winslow's hardware.
No, they buy all their
They
own
would buy
switches
their
and
own.
computers, and they use, there is some consolidation on our server equipment that they use, police and fire.
Yeah.
That's what we build them, we've looked at it as various ways over the years, and it's a percentage of fixed costs and a percentage of labor is really what they pay. And we've argued back and forth several times about what that number is or isn't.
So,
Should be-
but like say the town of Clinton, they would have their own
They do,
software
yeah.
support
That's just an
services.
hourly fee, only when we go, we build it from the time we leave Waterville till the time we get there. Yeah, it's really just,
Right,
Oakland and Winslow are connected to Waterville's network
yep.
through private fiber, so they're a little different arrangement than everyone else is.
Well, just salaries and fringe benefits alone, we're spending about $170,000 a year. And 30% of our time is in Winslow.
Yeah, it's not, I wouldn't say it's 30% of our total time, it's 30% of
outside
all of our
office.
technology tickets. Not everything is a ticket because it's just the nature of how it sort of works, but 30% of probably the person that works for me's time, can directly be attributed to Winslow and Oakland.
I think you guys all recall, we had some kind of a discussion last year where Karen was here saying, maybe we ought to
And I
reevaluate
think
that.
I remember the discussion, the contracts aren't on the fiscal year, correct?
They are now.
Oh, they are now on fiscal year, so we could raise better, because last time they were not.
I don't think you compare the 40,000 revenue to the full 400,000.
Well, maybe not, but I'm just looking at 170 for pay and fringe benefits like Medicare and.
But
group
is
health.
that both, is that both?
That's both people, yes.
Both people?
Yeah, and largely, it would take two of us to essentially work for the city.
That's
Right, is the
right,
kicker,
the
I
point is if we didn't have any outside contracts,
Mhm.
we'd still need 2 full-time people.
Okay.
I know, but I think to John's point, we should bill somebody else the same amount we're billing ourselves.
Oh, I get it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's-
I mean, I hate to.
We brought this up last
Well, no, that's a
year.
good point.
We didn't look at it this way though last year.
John's got a valid point.
Yeah, you got
I agree with that, yeah.
And we've looked for different ways to assess it. It's been very hard. Like Josh said at the beginning, there's no model out there that we could find to copy from billing. So,
Well, we certainly have our own figures as to what we spend. And we can basically break it down percentage-wise of what time we spend. So it doesn't take a genius. I mean, if we didn't provide Winslow services, and Josh knows that, I don't want to alienate Winslow,
right.
what would they do? Would they hire their own IT? Would they?
They'd probably be spending more than they are with us.
No, there's no doubt.
So,
I think you would too.
Yeah. Although Oakland uses a lot less than Winslow.
Yeah.
Because the town office in Oakland's not in. Right. So if I'm in Winslow and I need something done with the computers thing, do I fill out a work?
You send me an email, I fill it out, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we can track the amount of time and the amount of time, hours that we go to Winslow.
And I think we left the discussion last year with, maybe next year we'll take a different viewpoint on things, which is kind of where we're at right now.
I think, $75 seems to be a normal hourly rate for this type of work. I feel as though if we are driving to other places and using our employees and using our, that it would be reasonable for that to be higher for a good time.
Why don't we report back to Josh and I about what the increases have been the last couple of years and what an increase might be for next year? The basic
We have
rates.
a record of the last, I assume the last 2 or 3 years, just how many hours we spend on the outside contracts.
Yeah,
For everything we draft.
So we can work out a percentage number on what percentage of our total hours is used on outside contracts.
It just sounds like it's been kind of arbitrary, like, oh, well, maybe we'll do 2, maybe we'll do 3. It might be more beneficial for us to have
Analysis of it.
yeah,
More of an in-depth analysis of it.
Mhm.
and that every year it's going to go up this amount,
So that we would
or,
have some hard numbers to really go by for the guide.
Do you know, Josh, the contracts we sign, are they 12-month or
Yeah, July, June.
year to year?
Yeah.
And you don't remember if the contract said the increase for July 1, 2015 would be X amount?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what we need to answer, he and I, and then report back to. Doesn't look like
Josh,
we're
what
gonna
would,
settle it now.
if you were a private contractor going to Winslow, not with the city, what would you charge them? What would be a fair rate to charge them as a private contractor?
Yeah, probably $100 an hour.
So that's realistically, if he's saying as a private contractor, $100, that should be the starting point.
I mean, I know the few people that we outsource anything to, it's 100 to 125.
So I think that right there should be a basis. So
Yeah, I mean, I've always looked for,
grossly,
you know, I mean, if we could ever get to the point where the other communities where we sort of have an arrangement like we do with a fire chief where it's a even arbitrary split, I would think that would be a cleaner way to sort of move forward, but it's always been sort of more of a political discussion, I think, than an
Mhm.
actual technical discussion.
Yeah.
So,
Because some
I
of
think we
those,
just need to be very careful, and we need to start looking out for Waterville. And I want us to have nice relationships with our surrounding towns and be able to share things, but I think our job is to make sure that Waterville is taken care of. And
Especially when their tax rate may be 60% of what ours is. But,
and especially if we look at raising our mill rate,
well, I mean,
we need to make sure that we're being fair to
we're not
our,
looking to gouge anyone, it's just a matter of being fair.
I think the analysis is needed. I think it's the right step in the right direction.
okay,
Good, so that won't happen.
yeah, maybe Josh and I could report back to the council's finance committee,
Good. And we're gonna be having these meetings anyway.
and it could be another one of these.
Might as well make sense to bring it to everybody, 'cause, like Dana, obviously, is on the finance committee.
Well, I was thinking, test it out first with the finance committee, and then kind of bring something back to you.
We can review it and review the numbers, sure.
Yeah. Oh, anyway,
Yeah,
we'll come back to the full group, yes.
yeah.
But otherwise, Josh, there aren't many large number of increases in your budget.
yeah, no, I mean, a lot of this is, like the 118,000, the biggest piece, those are contractual obligations that the city signed with software vendors. And like $90,000, that's roughly tied up within 4 departments. I know our finance office, 60-some odd thousand dollars a year. And then the rest of this represents, a lot of departments combined. We have about $62,000 in this budget for replacement of software and hardware assets that the city owns. We have about $600,000 in technical assets throughout the city, so that's still like an 8 or 9 year replacement cycle. For everything, I mean, if you talk monitors, phones, I mean, network equipment, I mean, it's not ideal, certainly. We prioritize in places that we can, right, exactly, right. We prioritize obviously like in our comm center and our PD and, inside of our cruisers and our fire trucks, et cetera, but, I mean, we don't really replace fire trucks fast enough or, garbage packers fast enough, so we're not unlike any other city department in that regard.
How's the new system at the police department working?
Awesome, excellent.
Is it required, like, maintenance?
No, and, we've moved all of our server, equipment to the police department because it's our newest, most secure facility. And the entire server room's on a UPS, the whole room. I mean, it's really a tremendous asset, for the city, especially as a whole.
Great.
So, done that very well.
Other questions? All right.
are there any comments or questions from anybody before we move on?
Okay. Linda, I think you're,
I think I am.
thank you, John.
Okay, well,
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to present the budget for the Health and Welfare Department. This is my 34th budget, but there's always something new and different to report about. You probably want to look at our budget.
Page 18 is the first.
And I guess the first thing that I would like to mention is, while most people associate us with just general assistance, we are the Health and Welfare Department for the City of Waterville. General assistance is just one piece. We do a lot of work that does not cost the city money. We work with children that are at risk, adults that are at risk. We work with schools regarding health issues. And that's a big piece of what they may, the caseworker may do in a day, in addition to taking applications for general assistance. There are 3 full-time employees in the department. There's one caseworker, his position is caseworker 1. In addition to casework, she has some administrative duties surrounding the billing of our purchase orders, and then there is another caseworker, and myself. If you had any questions, I have a lot of information to share with you. I can just show you, this was last Friday, a caseworker's log. She had 17 cases that she worked on. Not only were there applications, but follow-ups for applications from previous days. The other caseworker and myself had another 10. So it's like 12.
And when you say case, doesn't DHS handle all these cases?
No.
Some of them we handle, they don't.
This is kind of a mystery area. Could you just explain what some of these extra services are? Or like, who are we serving and how do these things come
The largest program that we serve the community is the General Assistance Program. And that is a program for people who don't have enough income and they need help with their basic necessities, rent, food, utilities, etc. And they come in to see us, and we take an application for general assistance. And we use state guidelines and the city's local ordinance to determine their eligibility. And if they are eligible, we give them a purchase order. And when they return, they have requirements. If they're able-bodied and can work, we have them look for work. We have them go to the Business and Career Center at the library to hook up the services there. If people are disabled, we have them apply for disability. We have them provide us with medical notes, attend counseling. So what happens when people come back, all of those requirements have to be verified each week. The caseworker has to go back and verify the information. And then what happens is the city, whatever the city's expenditures are, the state of Maine Department of Human Services, which is the General Assistance Program, reimburses us at 50%.
for the general assistance given, not the administrative costs?
No administrative costs.
But the state requires that we do this, isn't it?
Right now, it's a mandate, it's an unfunded mandate, and there are, I think, 8 or 9 bills in the legislature that are currently looking at different components of the program.
Seeking to reduce the state's reimbursement, right?
Well, reimbursement was one, making a person live in a community 180 days before they can apply, making stiffer penalties for fraud and disqualification periods. There's a bill in there that would not allow immigrants in the state to receive general assistance, the reimbursement, just different things.
Linda, the residency requirement is forbidden on federal level.
That's correct.
Supreme Court ruled on that.
You're absolutely correct, but it seems to come up every few years. There are legislators in Augusta who look at that, but it has been studied, Councilor Subbott, a lot, and that is the conclusion it's had thus far. But it does seem to be a periodic topic of conversation.
It does.
It does.
Like,
So
it's
we,
like taxing nonprofits.
yeah, so we are mandated by the state to use the state law. So we are audited once a year. And they take a statistical analysis of the amount of cases you had in a month. And then they look to see that you're following the law, you're taking a written application, you're writing narratives, they're looking at your decision, they're looking at everything in the file to make sure that, you know, you've crossed your T's and dotted your I's, and making sure that when your clients come back, they're adhering to the program, and if they're not, we have to find them ineligible for assistance.
But if they are eligible, you are required to
Right,
use the assistance. There's not like, there's not a discretion of, oh, well, this town is giving away all this money and this one.
Oh,
It's a state requirement
You're absolutely
that,
correct.
that if they meet the standard, there is no choice.
That's
And
correct.
that's how it's administered. I know it's not always conveyed that way in the media.
So
Right.
they don't have to live in Waterville for a certain period of time? They just,
No,
they
there's no.
could actually just move in?
Get off the bus and.
Yeah, there's no residency requirement, and what we find sometimes is that because there's a homeless shelter in Waterville, we might get people from other communities who cannot return to the community where they come
Well, let's
from.
be really clear, if you're poor,
Yeah, no, yeah.
you're not packing up a moving van and moving, okay?
Well, wait a second.
This is-
This is an attractive town for certain kinds of.
Thank you.
I,
We can give a ride.
For instance, Linda, it looks like prescriptions,
Huge
back
jump.
in 13, 14, they were $2,000 a bottle. But now it looks like you're asking for $12,000.
As of today, we spent over 4,300, and that's because people have lost their name care in the last year. And I mentioned to Mike when I put together the budget that I did not have, you know, you're guessing that it's going to be higher, but as of this afternoon, 4,300, we did an analysis of 25 vouchers that were waiting for the Department of Health and Human Services to convert to name care rate, and that was another $1,500. And we have 3 more months into this fiscal year for people to come in and request assistance with medication.
Now, what would happen if, I mean, do you have lines of people just, is there a backlog of cases?
Well, I don't know if I call it a backlog, but just to show you on Friday, we had that many people, and one of the caseworkers was up in finance in the morning. So it was one caseworker, myself in the morning, and then the 2 of them and myself in the afternoon. Actually, there are times when they worked in other departments that were shorthanded. I'm the only one in the department sometimes.
So, but
Because they're floating to the other.
They're floating to the other departments, which they've done a lot.
on that, can we talk about, you said there's other services then outside of general assistance that the city,
Sure.
what are the other things that you're spending
Well,
time with?
Well, I can give you an example. We had a gentleman about 90 years old in January and February. I consume most of my time working with the state to identify resources to help him, and my caseworkers help me. Telephone calls, working with adult protection every day, checking in with the police department every day, checking in the hotel that he's staying. None of that is a purchase order, but it's very time intensive. You might be working with a child that's at risk, and you're working with the police and child protection and the schools and.
With a 90-year-old gentleman, you were working with the police department quite a bit too, right?
Yes, that's the gentleman I'm speaking about. So, and then
Because you did the night housing at the hotels, motels, all everywhere.
and that doesn't show up anywhere. So then we take applications for the trust funds, Ames Charity, Mildred Brave Fuel Fund. I'm involved in the abatement process. So there's a lot of things we do in addition to general assistance, but that's the one that I think most people see the most. That's
So
what we do.
you're seeking about a 20% increase in your general assistance budget. Well,
An
Mike
increase?
apparently is not approved that item increase. We went from 98 projected in 2014-15 to a request of 118,000. Am I looking at something wrong?
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. Let's look at page 19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
General assistance.
Our current budget is 136,
Right,
and proposed is 112.
112.
Right, but John's saying over what was spent, we're asking for an increase instead of aligning more than closer than what we're projected to actually spend this year.
Well, that's a projection
Of 98?
of 98 based upon when I did my budget. But when I reviewed the information before I came here, I think we'll be closer to the 89,000 of last year.
Spent.
Spent.
So then why are we requesting 118?
Well, it's 112 because, I can answer that, because we're seeing more and more people come in for prescriptions. We're starting to see a lot of people come in who've lost their food stamps. They have that new rule in the state of Maine, if
Oh,
it's
yeah?
a volunteer. We're starting to see a lot of people there.
That's what we give it to.
Well, actually, we've had a ruling from the Department of Health and Human Services on that. If they qualify for general assistance, they have to have it. However, once they apply for general assistance, we have rules and regulations. So if they come in, we can't deny them because they lost their food stamps. If they're eligible, we assist them. And then we say, if you come in next week, you're going to have to look for work, or finish your education, or file for disability. So it's not a given that the city or the municipalities in the state of Maine are going to necessarily replace that program.
So much of the help is a week-to-week-to-week thing.
Week to week.
We don't give help for someone months in advance. Right.
So,
Because the thing is, the important thing is to make them come back to certify that they look for work.
So what kind of a duration are we talking about?
I'm sorry,
What kind of a duration are we talking about with a week-to-week thing? What's the longest they can go off a general assistance?
there's no time, it's not a grants and aid program, as long as a person sufficiently verifies that they've complied with the rules of the program, you give them assistance. However, we work very hard, the caseworkers are tremendous case managers. They work so hard to work with these individuals, some of whom don't understand their requirements, spend extra amount of time. You may be with one client a half an hour. I've seen a caseworker with a client for 3 hours, trying to explain things to them, you know.
What's the range of ages? Are these all over the map, or mostly older people or younger people?
I'd say there's a range of people. We do have a considerable amount of people who've applied for disability, and that is a very lengthy process, anywhere from 3 to 4.5 years to go through the process of being denied, appealing it, going in front of an administrative law judge. And we actually, with people though who are disabled, we put a lien on their SSI claim. So if they are awarded benefits, we get half of our money back, and the state gets the remaining 50%.
That's one thing I was impressed with when I came to work here, because I didn't, even though I did GA in other towns, I didn't realize the lien process, and Linda has been very, very vigilant about that. In 1 year, I think we recovered
Over 30,000.
over $30,000.
Yeah, what's
Against
happening?
the back benefits?
Excuse me?
Against the back benefits?
Yeah, the
Retroactive?
SSI.
Yeah.
But what happens is, in the last few years, administrative law judges are not necessarily going back and approving claims 3, 4, and 5 years. Sometimes it's a year. And then what we've seen just in the last 2 weeks, 2 folks have been, they won at the administrative law judge level, but they were awarded SSDI benefits, which is based upon their earnings into the Social Security system. And the law does not allow the municipalities to have any money on those claims,
Right.
only the SSI.
All the SSI.
Are there
So
any alternative prescription programs under ARPA?
yes, we work so hard. We are aligned with both our hospitals. We refer people to care partners, prescription assistance programs. We knew last year that people were going to lose their main care, the able-bodied folks between a certain age. And we're just inundated with people who are coming in for, life-sustaining medications. And,
Question.
yes.
When they apply for general assistance, say if they need like diapers, baby supplies, or food, does it go on like a name care card? How do you do that? Do you pay, or you don't give them cash? but-
We never give
Okay.
cash, I mean, maybe once a
Right.
we write
Okay.
purchase orders, and most of our clients who are receiving temporary assistance for needing families, they have an EBT card.
Okay. Now,
They receive their cash
if
amount.
somebody is homeless, what's stopping them applying for general assistance here and possibly another town?
Well, there is a hotline in the state of Maine that has been created to try to develop a concerted effort, more coordination. And we work so closely with the Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter because it's very hard sometimes to find housing. And we work closely with the homeless shelter and the caseworkers and the landlords to see where they've been, do they owe any money in a previous apartment, what they can afford. But I was talking to the caseworkers this afternoon, and because I've been here a long time, and what we're finding are that more and more folks are qualifying for subsidized housing programs like BRAC, which is Bridging Rental Assistance Program, Shelter Plus Care, mental health housing programs where the applicant pays a certain percentage of the rent. And that has saved the city a lot of money over the last few years because they're not having to spend the entire amount of their general assistance on housing.
But that's only at certain places though, right? Not, that type of housing is only in certain areas though.
Well, I think BRAC and Shelter Plus Care might be statewide, but there's like Waterville Housing Authority, and they have a certain jurisdiction where you can apply for housing vouchers, but then there are other housing programs in the state where people can move their vouchers around the state. You're starting to see that a little bit.
That's what, I appreciate you, and I realize it's rapid fire questions.
That's
I
okay.
appreciate you answering the questions.
That's okay.
I think, is there a concern, and I think this is what we keep really kind of beating around the bush on, that Waterville becomes a place where we essentially are attracting people by other services that are offered here to come here, and then we end up carrying their load when these were not Waterville people to begin with. Do you see that as a high percentage of
No.
the people that you're dealing with?
I don't, and we do have a homeless shelter here, but recently there was an article comparing Waterville to Augusta, and similar size, and they, hundreds of thousands of dollars in GA.
Well, right, because they get off the bus, they get out of
Right.
the window and they go to Augusta.
But your question is well intended, because
Yeah.
whether it's Waterville or another service center, that's always the question. Is it easier to get help in one town versus another? I know we're very strict and fair.
I don't mean that it's easier on your end, given I realize you're just following this strict set of rules. I guess, do you see that because are we essentially, because of these other services, bringing in people who wouldn't normally be here, and do you find that a large chunk of the people, or are they mostly people who have been here in Waterville?
Well, there are very poor people who live in this community, and for some of them, being in a service center is a lot easier for them to get to their doctors, to get to their appointments, if opposed to being in a community where they had no transportation. And for some folks, they tell us, it's easier for me to be within walking distance to places I have to go to, like the food bank, the soup kitchen.
We're also a city with 51% rentals. So, I mean, if you are having a rough time and you need cheap housing, it's going to be in a place that has rentals. So, I mean, that probably has more to do with it than, and you have to understand too, the homeless shelter does more than just home people.
Absolutely.
They set them up and try to get them back on their feet and then get them back into housing. So we're not consistently, hopefully, creating a cycle of abuse with this.
That's
so I hate that we look at the homeless shelter as a possible negative to the city when I think it could actually be a real big positive to the city.
It is.
But it's mostly people from the communities that use it.
That's not,
Yeah, it is. We'll check on the numbers. It is.
really, well, I just had somebody in my classroom and spoke to my students, and that's not the information that we were given.
Some of them.
most of them.
Well, some, of course, but no.
It's gonna be anywhere for many years. I mean, we started this 26, 25 years ago.
Yes.
I know. I was the first person who opened the shelter door on the
You were
first
the
night
one.
on Thanksgiving. Yes, and we actually
Thank
did that
goodness.
25 years ago. When you look at how many shelters are out there and the distances between communities, from here, yes, you have something in Skowhegan, you have Augusta, we do a lot of collaboration with Augusta,
Yes.
there's no question about it. One of the things I need to just share, I am also one of the founding members of the East Eating Sandwich Program, and we'll be celebrating our 26th year this year. And we've done, I remember the first night was a total of 5 meals, and now we're averaging close to 3,000 a month. So, when you look at all the legal restrictions and regulations that have to be managed, we are one of the most respected communities around in the state, and our staff is spoken of incredibly well. They also get hit by someone who has worked at the legislative level, as I have, and at the congressional, when we have phone calls and letters and issues from our constituents, it goes back onto our communities before it is ever taken care of at the congressional, at the federal level, or even at the state level. Because the answers are here in those 2 other places. One of the things that I learned 25 years ago, over the last 25 years, is the relationship that we do have with our neighboring community of Waterville. That GA office, just like ours, the collaboration, the communication has been outstanding, and we are now seeing that same thing happen just across the bridge as well. And it takes you have to I know what you go through.
What do you know about legislation currently at the state level that's seeking to put limits on GA similar to limits on food stuff?
Well, I know that there is a public hearing, I just got notified today, April 15th, 1 o'clock in the Cross Building, to discuss all of the general assistance bills at once, 1 to 4, 1 to 5 in the afternoon. So there'll be public testimony on them, and the public testimony is in front of the Health and Human Services Committee. So that's pretty much what I know, what the bulk of the bills are.
Anybody from your office planning to attend?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Anybody from your office planning to attend?
I probably will be attending.
Okay. Are you going to speak against the cuts in the state spending, which are obviously forcing us to increase our GA?
Obviously, over the years, I've had opportunities to testify. At one time, I was the president of the Maine Welfare Directors Association. However, then and now, whenever I testify, it's with the authority of the city manager. So I would never go to the legislature and speak my voice. It would be the voice of the city,
Linda, are we incurring any costs associated with all the mental patients that are being housed in Waterville?
Incurring other types of costs,
Are
such
we incurring
as...
any costs?
Oh, we do have folks who have some struggles, mental health issues.
But are these people that are being housed here as part of that program?
Part of our general assistance program.
Yeah. Let me explain it for you.
Okay,
There are contract housing in Waterville for mental patients that aren't normally residents of Waterville, but they're being housed here.
oh, I would have to know specific cases. If a contract program brought somebody into Waterville, they probably would pay for that housing for the first 30 days. And then once they're here.
I suspect they're paying for it longer than that. The state, I think the state is funding the program.
Yeah, I'd have to
Wait, so
know.
you're saying,
You're talking about specific programs which have full houses
There,
there.
no, John, there are contract, there are doctors in Waterville who contract to house.
I think that's the police budget, Fred, that you want to ask that.
Yeah, I know that, we already know about that. I'm just wondering if the city's paying any benefits for anything that.
I would have to know more specifics, whether I could,
You'd only know about the individuals, not necessarily the program.
well, I mean, we work with several mental health agencies in our community. And as I said,
There are a number of them being housed on Union Street, you know those programs.
oh, is that KBH?
I'm not sure the name of it. It's not, I don't think it is.
One thing I hope is not forgotten, and Linda did mention it earlier, is that for the newer counselors, the two women in Linda's office do float
Yes, oh, they do.
to the other departments, fire, police, public works, finance, assessing. So they're not doing casework all the time.
No, they're not, in fact, in
And
June,
if
July.
anyone wants a record month to month to
I
month, how
have
many
that.
hours, Linda has that.
In June, July, and August, I spent a considerable amount of time helping Paul Castaway in the assessor's office, at least 20 hours a week. They spent 2.5 weeks in finance in August covering vacations. And then I had a caseworker leave, and a period of time, 4 weeks, there was no cross-training. But my newest caseworker has started working in finance as a way to learn their operations so that when they need somebody more long-term, she'll be trained. And right now, she's working about 12 to 16 hours a week in the finance department, because there may be people in the near distant future who may be out on sick leave. So I like to have my caseworkers have that training ahead if it's possible. So, yeah, a lot of the times you just have maybe one caseworker.
All your caseworkers are licensed social workers in the state, and
They're not licensed social workers, but Denise Murray's been with the city since 1990, and she is currently a certified named welfare caseworker. And because she's a certified caseworker, it's for 3 years. I have to continually resend her so she can be ready in 3 years to get the training again. And then our newest caseworker, I've already started her on the road to becoming certified, hopefully by next October. But I have to give her the time to go to a one-day workshop to get that training that she needs. Well, I'm committed to that because I think the training is important. They learn all about the state laws, the ordinance, and they get to network with other professionals who are doing what they're doing. And I'm a certified Maine welfare director in the state.
Any new questions?
Linda, do you have a record on, I guess, a percentage of how many general assistance cases where general assistance has been awarded
Sure.
or done where it's fallen through and they've abused it?
Well, I can tell you since July 1st, we've taken over 1,200 applications, and 78% of those were approved, and we denied 22%. But we also have almost 100 walk-ins, we've given out 244 food bank referrals, trust funds, and I can tell you, if you wanted to know with those numbers that we have since July 1st, how many people have been denied for fraud or disqualified, I could provide that information to you. I just have to go back and plug in that information to get it out of the...
22% have been denied.
Yes.
For the sake of a timely discussion, could I recommend that, I assume that you'd be available for any individual counselor who would like to.
Oh, absolutely, I'd be more than
and get
happy
those
to
questions.
just share my time with you and your thoughts and ideas.
Thank you
Let me
very
know.
much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Yes.
All right. Maybe they're all tired out, Ann, so they're not any questions. Page 30 is the planning budget. You have been here quite as long as I did, but
26 and a half years. I didn't put this together, Mike did, and there's one thing that is missing is the cost of having the zoning map updated every year. It hasn't been done yet this year because it's done by aerial survey, and I think we're a little bit behind in the work. I've submitted the information to them in December. So that's why I don't have a number for the year-to-date zoning map. It's under professional services.
Oh,
Okay,
that's what that is?
that's what the policy is.
I thought that was hiring, like building power.
No.
Well, how much do you think for next year?
Well, as I said, I can't tell what it's going to be this year. The year before it was 530. So next year, it depends on how many zoning changes there are, but somewhere between, yeah. 750 has a nice ring.
Yeah, okay.
The projected numbers aren't right here because my benefits are listed as the same as projected as approved.
And if any council wanted a zoning map, do you have copies?
I do not have paper copies. You can buy them from Aerial Survey or you can get them online.
I got one about 10 years ago, but I can't remember how I got it.
Yeah, we used to sell
Always
them.
vendorize, Brad, you got it.
We used to sell them, but because the zoning map changes over time, we won't be selling out-of-date zoning
You
maps.
have a digital copy?
Digital copy on the website. And
Well,
it's actually easier to
there
look
we
at
go.
it on the website because you can blow it up on the screen.
It's free.
It's good.
I'll teach you.
After we pay for
And it
it.
doesn't work. Teach you how to use it.
So Ann, I misheard you were saying that it's incorrect about the health stuff being here, correct? Because
Benefits.
that's not part of,
Right, the approved budget was for a full year, and I've been part-time since January 1st, so I won't have those benefits for a full year.
Mike, what is the scenario with hiring a new planning / code enforcement?
It's just code enforcement.
Just code enforcement, we're going to advertise this weekend over an assistant regard, and we hope to have someone for code enforcement in mid-May.
Start writing tickets for all the trash.
Absolutely.
he's next up.
And Davis, if anybody has questions or wants comments about anything we're talking about, please pipe up. I realize it kind of feels a little closed off here.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Ann. So speaking of code enforcement, I think that's nice, right? All right. So the position you asked about is the increase, the reason for the increase on page 13. I figured the health insurance for that new person at a single rate. Of course, that we don't know until we get a new person, if it's going to be single or family. So that obviously could change. His budget's pretty simple. Garth reminded me of one thing today, and it's not in here for training, but the state requires considerable amount of training for code enforcement people. So wherever we hire, we'll most likely have to go. I don't know if we'll find someone that's got all the certifications. So it takes, how long?
2 years. I need to come up then. It used to be you had a year to get certified. Now the way they've got it set up, it takes 2 years because of their scheduling and everything. The state used to provide all the training for free in Augusta or Portland and different places they set it up. Now you pay for everything. Anywhere from $100 to $300 a course.
But, no, just to be clear, the state actually mandates much of our the building codes that you are inspected, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
It is, okay.
Yeah, and I think it's an unfair system that we have to follow.
Because it used to be,
mandate.
those things used to be controlled locally, but then the state has actually implemented the uniform building codes.
That's correct.
And when they did, they provided the courses for free.
Yeah,
So
right.
They did increase the regulations, but then said, well.
They funded the mandate at the time, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
If you hire an assistant, does that person need to be certified?
Does that person, sorry?
Need to be certified?
No, the first year, under the way the current law says, they can learn their training and still do the job.
Okay.
yeah. But eventually they should be certified.
Right. What we do is we'll take the steps and get somebody certified.
Yeah, do the small towns in the state that have code officers all have them certified?
4,000 people or more, yes.
That many? Well, we might be able to get one with that certification already.
We may.
We may.
never know what we're gonna get. We're actually not gonna turn away the prospect if they're interested in working for the money.
Right.
You know, so.
How have things been in terms of permitting the last month? Not much happening yet.
It's been a slow winter for us, it really has. I mean, our revenue is $26,000 now. We got three months to go.
Wow.
Got a lot of people that made commitments to us, backed out, not gonna do it this year, gonna do it next year. 2016, it looks better. Looks like we'll be able to meet our goals. We've got a lot of people that are doing different things. The Seton Hospital, the old Seton Hospital, there's some projects going on over there. Kobe's talked to me a little bit about stuff they're doing. It a lot depends on what's gonna go down the Hathaway Road, so. You never know with this type of business.
We should look.
It's based on the economy, it's based on a variety of things.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we can excel by 80–90% of our budget as far as that.
With the new code enforcement employee, do you see us being able to increase revenues eventually through enforcement of current codes? Being
Right.
able to start going after some of the violations?
Right. What happens is, one person, I mean, it's a big town, and you can go around and see things happening and catch things, but you can't catch everything. A lot of people do things on weekends, a lot of people do things at night.
Right.
We catch people that put what you call illegal apartments in their homes. And you don't pick it up until they want to get health and welfare to pay the rent, and then you pick it up. So you refuse them and you go through that whole process, but it's still not legal, so you can't permit them for it because it doesn't meet the requirements. So it's one of those things that it's going to come back to get them when they want to sell the house. That's where these things come back. But if we wanted to take it to court, force the people to tear the apartments out, we could, but it's not worth the money for us to go through that expense to do that. So we deal with some of those issues. But the biggest thing for the permitting is tax base. We want to know what you're doing so we can fairly tax your property. So that's one of the biggest things, outside of fact of safety and making sure things are done by code. But a lot of it is just, but a second person, yeah, definitely. There's a lot of stuff that, you know, if I'm on vacation, if I'm out for a day, if I'm even out on the road, the people will come in and apply for permits. And there's nobody here, they leave a blank, and then you're chasing them all over the place to get the fees. So yeah, it'll make a difference.
One of my neighbors earlier this year.
So if someone puts an illegal apartment inside their house, and we're not going to take the court or anything, but it's not safe for somebody to live in.
It's not that it's not safe, it's not me, say for example,
Pay for the building permits.
you don't have enough parking. You know, that's just usually the issue, is the parking, it's the size of the lots. It's not necessarily that they're doing anything specifically wrong,
Yeah.
but it's the fact.
But once you find out that somebody has done that illegally or without the proper paperwork, do you go in there to make sure it is safe for somebody to live in there at all? Or?
Yeah, we go in and look at stuff and make sure that everything's been done the way it should be done. If there's issues and stuff, we'll make them change it. But normally, the biggest thing is if I catch you doing something, you put a pool in, and you didn't tell us, we're gonna go after the permits, and then we're gonna put them in your tax record. So, you know, it's better off with these people up front.
You get a lot of people tattletaling on their neighbors or things like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, going down KMB, seeing the sign hanging out, emails coming in.
So Garth, you were saying that a lot of your income is down this year? A lot of your income is down this year, permits?
We are right now, yeah.
But Mike, you've got 125,000.
Yeah, let's look at page 3 before Garth leaves, because that's where the revenues are. So right now, we're 100,000 short.
Of what our projections were?
Huh?
Our projected amount for
For building
1450?
permits.
Yeah, well, now that we know we were only at 26, that projected at 125 doesn't seem like
No.
we're gonna make it.
Maybe our arguments for hiring more planning people, maybe based on faulty information.
Well, look what we made the year before,
I see that, but
247.
maybe we overreacted.
No, there's construction planned for the spring.
No, we don't overreact. You know, it's 15
Well, I
years.
know, but it says projected 125 for this year.
Well, we had a
What's the,
drop.
but do we have a historical analysis, or is this a one, I
I think
we're
that
gonna take more than
247
1
was-
year's history.
No, the average has been 150 to 180, I think, for the last 4 years. Yeah,
Including that 247. which
including the
Might have
247.
been the aberration. But hey, no,
Colby's planning buildings, Thomas is planning buildings. Hopefully they'll start this spring.
hopefully,
Doc, have you received more complaints?
I can give you
about
the
trash?
historical.
Have you received, any more complaints about trash, like at certain buildings, people been calling you, like apartment buildings,
Yeah, this was an interesting day. We had 3 complaints today. One on Waterville Housing up on Drummond Avenue, where their recyclables are blowing all over the streets and into a neighbor's yard, and had to address that and deal with the Waterville Housing, be able to go over and clean it up. Your neighborhood, 44 Gary Lane, well, we
Still
sent
there.
them letters, and we were there again this morning to make sure that,
And that's been there all winter, so that's been there 6 months of trash sitting there.
Right.
and then when I pulled out onto Water Street.
And so,
straight-
let's be clear, the culprit of that is the people who are dumping the trash, which is why we will need more code enforcement to go after the people dumping the trash.
Although, this is
The
just
people-
residents that live there, that just put their trash up front,
Yeah.
not in the purple bags.
Right.
With no dumpster.
Right.
And it sits there.
Right, so, but what I'm saying is, let's be clear on who and what the problem is. It's people who are living in a situation where they're just gonna throw trash out front. When we talk about,
And they're allowed to do that because the landlords are lackadaisical. I mean, it's terrible.
well, we have some great landlords in town. We have, I'm sure it's like anything. We had there, I'm sure there are some who
Yep.
would prefer not to invest in the property and rent to people who are gonna throw trash out front. And that's a code enforcement issue, for sure.
Yeah. It's pretty much nationwide. Same issues everywhere for
And you
trash.
see a lot of everything.
Yeah.
As I was saying, 132 Water Street this afternoon, the Russo's place.
Mhm.
I think everything they own is out in the yard, thrown all in the snow, all trash. And I stopped over there today and said, what are you doing? She died, the house went into foreclosure, and everything in the house went out in the yard.
So like the building at 44 Cary, when do you actually start fining the landlord for keeping the trash out for 6 months, which is unhealthy for anyone in the street because there's trash everywhere. There's, animals that can come up from the river. When do you say, we're gonna stop here to find that?
You gotta give the person, the owner, an opportunity to take care of it. The person who owns that house lives in Waldo, Maine.
Waldo, did you say
There's
that?
no idea what's going on up here in Waldo.
Well, that's the problem.
But see, to me, that's not an excuse because, well, that's not an excuse, that's their business.
We gotta start nailing these people
Yeah.
with fines and we'll
Yeah.
have to take care of this trash problem real quick.
I'm not yelling at you.
I got
No, he's done a great job.
Without notifying anybody. I can write so many tickets to people say, your heads are spinning. It depends what type of enforcement you want. And when I was in the police academy, they said, you be careful.
You can't write a ticket, like a parking ticket, to collect the fine. In order for us to collect fines through code enforcement, we have to go through the court system, right? It's not like a traffic ticket.
But Mike, did you wanna have trash, looking up trash for 6 months and not being moved?
I'm not talking about that,
No,
I'm
that's what
just
I'm trying to
talking
say.
about
So you're-
fines.
you're saying
Fines
you
are not the
summons them-
same.
summons them to a court hearing and have a judge make the decision they violated it and issue
Right.
the fine.
So that period of time, as you well know, can take a lot. No, I wouldn't like looking out at that trash either, but the thing is, we can't just say, oh, we're gonna write these things up for fines and collect all this money. No, that doesn't.
Right, but you know what, when you start hitting people so it stings and they start paying these fees, other people are gonna take notice and realize that we mean business and we have ordinances, they exist for a reason, and that is to be enforced.
And Mike,
And I realize that you have been understaffed, which is what, another reason why, just the satisfies the argument of why we need more, more bodies in code enforcement.
Are you saying that you have to go to?
You can't do it by yourself.
Right, correct?
Yep.
I don't think so.
Ask your attorney right next to you.
Yeah, that's good.
And we can't just collect fines without,
Because we can.
Mike, this is unhealthy for the people on that street.
I don't think so.
But it's
We
unhealthy.
can't slap a lien on them and take it?
Sure you can. With a lien.
It's not, so why is it different than a traffic ticket or a parking ticket?
Well, even a parking ticket or a traffic ticket, you have a right to contest it. So, you know, unless you want to capitulate and say, yeah, I know it, and pay the fine, you have a right to go to court. And I think Mike's saying that in the case of a code violation, you have to basically give them a day in court, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
If they
Due
want it.
process, that's what it's called, due process.
But they're not all gonna want it, just like.
But he makes a good point that we can, through enforcement, bluff our way through some of it. You know, say you're either gonna pay $250 a day for the next, for so many days unless you get it cleaned up. And you've done that
Yes.
already to people.
Yeah, what you don't see is all that I do to get done. You see a few things in front of your house, over here, over there, but you don't see the hundreds that I take care of.
And like I said, every time I contacted Garth, he's been amazing. He's
Yes.
right on there. And
Right.
But what I'm saying about this particular house, I mean, there's a bucket of glass. It's just strewn. So people walking down, driving down, you've got garbage everywhere. You've got glass everywhere. Now that's unfair to the people that live there. It's quality of life, it's called. You want to bring better quality of life into the city of Waterville, and this is what we're offering them. Here, live on the street. It's okay.
Who put the trash there? People that live
It's the
there?
people that live there. It's a mound.
And they're.
They're refusing to do the thing.
There's no purple bags
They don't
there.
want to
There-
get paid either.
Well.
They're boycotting.
And as a matter of fact, I think
Landlord.
it's
Well, if they lived in Fairfield, you know what, if they lived in Fairfield, they'd have to have their own private trash too, so that they.
Well, a lot of landlords these days are going with outside, disposal
Gregory's
company.
disposal.
Let's just make sure the blame is on the people where it rests, and that is the people who dump the trash.
Right.
Thank you.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm tired of the city getting a bad rap, like it's the city's fault that certain individuals are making decisions. If they want to boycott and not do this trash, that's fine, but they need to keep their property up to ordinance and up to code, whether they have their own
It should be.
truck that they throw their trash in and take it to the dump, whether they hire somebody or whether they put the purple bags out, but
It's pretty well known, if you live in Waterville and your landlord doesn't have a curbside pickup service, you're gonna be buying purple bags. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
it's better than paper,
I think Garth has been needing help for a long time, and I think this is the step in the right
we asked
direction.
for it last year, and I'm really glad that this year we're getting it.
Yeah.
Because I know last year you came and asked for it and said you were looking at one day retiring and you were gonna leave the city of Waterville, and then what? So now I'm really excited that somebody's gonna be under you, gonna learn your strategies and learn from you, and if you ever do leave us, hopefully we have somebody that's gonna be a solid code enforcement officer.
In some ways, we could almost say that some of our code enforcement issues come from premature cuts in years past to the code enforcement budget, which is saying.
And we went from 2.5 people to 1.
Right, and so when you don't plan out what the repercussions of random cuts are, that's what.
Well, and when you have a state that's giving us more requirements.
Yeah, that's
And
part
more
of it.
cuts to healthcare, and more cuts and more cuts and more cuts, showing we have to pick up the slack. ARP has to pick up the slack, there's more work, but we don't have more money, more people.
Pretty common back there.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask the council if you consider looking at vacant or abandoned building ordinances such as Bangor has.
We're working on that now.
I'm just wondering, is it something that's on the schedule to discuss?
It's not on the agenda yet. It will be though.
Fred has drafted something that's recently, that's just very recently been
Right, I'm aware of it, and I'm just curious because, some communities may get as much as $500 for a vacant abandoned building, which would, if I calculate 700 units in Waterville, and let's say you have 200 empty structures, and there are a lot of them out there because I've been walking the streets a lot lately. That's over $100,000 you could potentially collect.
Oh, I agree, and if you talk to Jennifer, I know I've talked to Jennifer Olson from Waterville Main Street, who's also said that, wow, we are terribly behind the times and not looking at these things. But again, some of that is due to the fact that we we have one person in code enforcement, so.
Absolutely, but here's a really good use for the person. And it's not so much the collection of money, it's the example that it would happen and more people would say, well, either I fix the building up, you know, or I have to tear it down, or I sell it. And that's really what you're after. It's not so much the collection of the money, it's making a change in the way the city looks.
That's right. Like getting people who have people throwing trash all over the yard, maybe if you find them enough, they'll fix up those properties, which helps with neighborhood revitalization, they can collect higher rents, and then we have people who aren't throwing trash all over the place.
That's why police want to stop you just speeding.
It's hard to revitalize the city when we're not on top of people who are doing whatever they can to tear it down. So, that would be a great step. Or fix it, or hurting the rest that are trying to fix it up. Right.
Okay, you want to move on?
Garth, get to it.
Anything else? Well, any questions?
You want to tear down that sign yet? The West Auto Body sign, AMB, is that coming down?
Yeah, that goes up for auction on,
Because they had
day after
till-
tomorrow.
They had till the 23rd to take care of that.
Well, you'll have your chance to get it at auction.
But there again, if you follow the rules of law, what you do is you send them a letter.
Yeah.
90% of what you do is bluff people.
Yeah.
Because
Don't
now
say
if
that.
he says, no, the bank says I'm not doing it, guess what happens?
say
I gotta
bluff.
send him another correction
Don't
order.
quote that.
It's another 30
Don't quote him
days.
saying that.
Then we have to take it to court. That's 60 days. So, you try to get things done as efficiently as you can without having to get.
But at the end of the day, if they don't, we're gonna follow through, damn
We're
it.
gonna take him to court.
Well, yeah,
Leaving
that's
the
true.
property.
It's not really a bluff, it's giving them the option to avoid prosecution and the lawyer's fees and the eventual loss anyway. So, you know, you're just telling them like it is, and I give you two choices, do it now or pay me later.
Greg, you ready? All right. Garth, thank you.
Thank you, Garth, for everything that you've done. We're
Thank you guys
long,
for
long
adding
years.
up for us and
And
making
have
this
a-
so.
All right, Greg, page is 14. Page 14, economic development, engineering. Greg does it all, many ways. So there are some changes here. Well, actually not many changes, and they're more my doing than Greg's.
I have just a couple of questions.
Okay,
Just for the
let's
additional time.
start with that.
I know that we give money to, Myth and festivals and things like that. When there are other annual festivals that happen in the city of Waterville, I was curious why those receive money from us, whereas other festivals don't, like in National Night Out in the South End.
Why should we should not pay any of them, I think.
Well, I was just curious,
We
it's
do.
been asked to me, so I don't know the answer.
Okay, yep, no, we do contribute to both the South End, National Night Out, and the North End one too in the past we have. The Harvest Fest, so those are in the 3,200 that you see other festivals events.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
shoot, I should have gotten that list from Amanda today, but I know that the South End is, and the North End we've contributed in the past. Harvest
But
Festival.
is it something that they have to ask for? They
Yes.
don't automatically get, the way that these other two are in the budget. So just,
Right.
and I'm not saying if that's right or wrong, it's just been asked of me why certain ones are in the budget and other annual events are not.
Well, they probably don't realize they're hidden in the festival event line. So really, they are budgeted in there.
It's like a miscellaneous.
I budget them in. I don't wait for them to call and ask me to put it in. I've been putting them in. We don't send out the money until after July 1 when they ask.
Okay.
Mike,
Yep.
I know you've been dying to cut the Franco Fest for years. And
Yes.
it's not the Franco American Festival anymore, it's the Festival at the Falls, which includes nonprofits. It's for nonprofits to make money. Now, you're cutting the cut for 4,100, what was it? Franco, 41, was it?
Well, in the current year, we have 45.
All right, so you're going to tell me the city can afford $4,500, this is free. This entertainment is free to the public, Nick was there last year, it was a great turnout. But you're willing to manage National Film Festival, and all the other ones, but just this one, you want to cut. What is your reasoning?
Well, it's $4,500 for 3 hours, and the people who come to that festival for 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon come for the entire region. We've got to stop trying to be something for everybody.
Then I think we need to cut everything. Like John said, cut it all.
Well,
Because what you're doing now, if the, anything else you're okay with. We had a great turnout last year.
you did a great job
had
in
a
getting
great
people
turnout.
there, but let's face it, Karen, the amount of people there, 50 people,
Was there 50
at
people there?
$4,500.
Was there 50 people there last year?
There was probably.
I was there for 2 hours. an hour
I
and a
didn't
half,
see
2
you,
hours.
I didn't see you.
I was there the year before.
I don't think it's a waste of
There was
people.
1, 2, 3,
Are we
4.
serving just Waterville citizens, or are we
We're
serving the
serving
entire?
everyone, we had people from Lewiston there this year. we had people from all
$4,500,
over.
that's a lot of cash.
For 3 hours.
Have
The
you
Myth
talked with
Festival is over a period of 2 weeks.
But we're changing the festival, Mike. It's not French Canadian anymore. We had so many different venues in the last year. We had Lebanese music, we had belly dancers, we had Irish music, Scottish music, we had French. It's changing to include more people, to get more people to come. So it's not the Franco American Festival anymore, it's Festival at the Falls,
Okay.
which is meant to include more people, a bigger diversity of people, to let people understand each other's cultures, not just the Franco culture.
How about the idea that the Growth Council and the Chamber of Commerce still both exist? I thought they were kind of merging.
The Growth Council is contracting with the chamber.
The chamber's going to run it.
They've restructured what they're doing and how they're doing it, and they've contracted with the chamber to reduce the overall cost.
So the cost of our contribution to the Growth Council has actually gone up.
Yeah, but remember, we went through that. That was when they talked about the restructure and hiring the new person and doing the new marketing.
Yeah, we weren't gonna hire this new Darryl Sterling guy, which we were paying like 30 grand to. But now it looks like,
But now remember, they brought in, we told them we needed a job description, they didn't have one, so then they came back, and
Did we ever get one? I never
Oh,
saw
yes.
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 Yes, we did.
So the chamber is going to hire the economic development person, and Growth Council is going to contract with the chamber for that person. So the Growth Council won't have any employees. We'll have a contract to use that employee with a job description and a very specific list of things we hope they accomplish.
And they've actually accomplished quite a bit in the last, 5-6 months, when you look at the apprenticeship program. They've actually turned things around quite a bit with some of the new blood that's been in there.
well, and there's no long-term commitment anyway. I mean, if we see
Well-
after a year or two that it isn't paying
But
off.
they
we can-
wanted a 3-year commitment?
They wanted a 3-year
Yeah.
Well, we've been in it 15
but we approve our
years.
budgets annually, so
Right,
the council next year could decide, I mean,
it's not working.
Mike, can you email me that job description and the objectives?
oh yeah,
Because I thought they were going to send them to me, but I've never gotten this.
sure. Yep. Yep, there is a written job description for that position, and it's being advertised.
It is now.
Yes, and we're going to be interviewing people in the next 3 weeks.
You send that to me?
The job description, sure.
In fact, I think some of what sometimes inhibits the work that goes on is the fact that every year we have this conversation. So that in some level, there should be, well, I think obviously there's even misunderstanding of what this whole new restructure was, so maybe we didn't have that conversation. So,
Right, we haven't,
because I thought,
it won't be until tomorrow morning, actually, that arrangement will be finalized.
Do we even have a final vote
we,
on that? I feel like they came in the first time, but then they never came back.
They,
Mike came back
we-
and asked if there was a, said, can I have this commitment, can we make a commitment? Is it okay to say, yes, we're going to commit to this additional funds? do this.
We
I
budgeted-
was there, the entire council said yes.
The full amount for this year, I only paid
It
half.
wasn't like
Question
a
was
big,
proposed,
it
yes.
wasn't like a big public vote about it, it was just a discussion.
No,
Just a
it's
discussion.
in the
There
budget.
was discussion and acknowledgement from us
Can I-
that we were okay with it.
Yeah, can I pay the
That's
second half
probably why it's not very clear, is because there wasn't any input.
update?
Right, and there should be, because it is very, very different than when the prior, I said prior couple of folks
I was gonna
who were
say,
employed by the
go
growth,
back a few years.
were at the growth council.
Can we talk about these agencies now, we did one of the,
Sure. Yep.
we're locked in the first half, we haven't got a choice there, right?
Locked in until 2021.
Now, is there any justification of continuing to give money to KV Cog? I don't see they ever do anything for us, and certainly not that much money for them.
If we, my feeling on that is if we get to the end of the budget line and we're looking for funds, that's one of the first places I would go to is the 18,390. So I don't do, are we getting our 18,390? Not every
I
year.
don't think we have for a long, long time.
Is there any kind of record of that, what they've been doing? Have they reported to us?
They've been kind of a clearinghouse on CDBG grants, but we don't even need to go through them like the CDBG grants. Other than that, I don't know what they do a lot for small towns.
They provide a lot of very
Have they ever
valuable
come in and
services
done
for small
presentations?
towns, but when a
Just
city
justify the donation.
like Waterville has its own engineer and the city has its own planner,
Right,
then we don't use KV Cog like the smaller towns who don't have those people.
correct.
So, I mean, Waterville was one of the founding members of KV Cog back in the late 60s, early 70s, and there's been that tradition, but we don't get what we used to. Probably.
So you still think they would make some kind of effort to try to legitimize the cost still?
Oh, well, they do through the administration, and I know that when I talked with Rosie, the director there, she said, if there's any discussion about the 18,390, I'd like to come in and tell the council what it is KV Cog does. So I thought with this list of agencies, if you want them to come in,
This is part of the problem with economic development in Waterville, where unlike any place from Bangor South, we don't have our own employee who's actively engaging with these various groups that we're giving money to. We call them to carpet once a year and expect them to just kind of regurgitate what they're standing there and trying to justify this, where there should be, I mean, if we're paying money to anybody, there should be a regular, ongoing accountability.
Absolutely.
I realize it's difficult the way things are set up now.
it is different.
But I think this is, Fred's been trying to really push this conversation recently, and I think it's one that we need to have about, and I'm not trying to get, I'm going to wrap this up. I realize we're talking about this budget and not anything I'm talking about, but a very holistically different view of how we treat economic development. So,
But if we do something, it's going to impact this budget.
Yes, it will.
it certainly is.
So there's 18,390.
Unless we use
apply
new-
to a position.
We could get rid of
Right,
KV
and we
Cog,
do have
but
new
that's
TIF
one
funds that are on the table as well.
A lot more than that.
I know, but it's a start.
I'm not gonna leave KV Cog totally hanging by itself. Some people don't attend don't attend don't see themselves, but a huge piece of KV Cog, and correct me if I'm wrong, and because you and I have sat in on a lot of the meetings for a number of years, but it's a good connector for our sustained living. And we have transportation, we have most of all of our communities take place there, which allows us to access their staff, so that we're able to look at things in a regional sense, not only looking at Waterville, but also our surrounding communities, Winslow, Fairfield, Benton. So there are some of us who do see KV Cog in a different light, but I'm fine with where you're going. But,
If we get to a real crunch,
yep, I
that's one of those
understand.
things. I guess that's my point.
I think, you know, my view last year, and I'm just now getting my head around, is how are these groups not all being paid and overlapping and doing some of the same work? And it is very difficult to sometimes see why they're not coming in and giving us or we're not giving them benchmarks to hit and some type of update
Okay.
from these organizations.
One thing we should feel good about is through the Growth Council, the board of the Growth Council, when we meet monthly, KV-COG is there, Waterville Main Street is there, First Park is there, and the Chamber is there. So that's the one board that has representatives from all those agencies sit in. Growth Council board. So every month, the Chamber or First Park or Waterville Main Street can report on what's going on for them as part of the Growth Council process. So in terms of coordinating and not much overlap, that has helped.
And you are there?
And I am there, the other two town managers are there, and then there's a board of 4 and 8, 12 people. 8 appointed by the chamber, and then, well, it was the 4 town managers, but opens out, so.
I really want to, again, make sure that we're taking care of Waterville, and besides Waterville Main Street, none of these organizations just focus on Waterville.
Right, which goes to the question that Fred and Nick have been talking about with having our own office, and then, of course, how do we fund it?
Right, which there is some new TIF funds on the table, which would not require an increase of taxes. But then that does, again, outside, we're not going to hammer this one out tonight.
Not tonight, yeah.
If you look at, I think Bangor has a really great model, and they have a group that's many more members than the Growth Council, but is somewhat like the Growth Council. But these are all different pieces of economic development. I think there is what we're lacking is that linchpin of who's looking at the Waterville. But it doesn't, anyway.
I assumed that we were going to circle back to this whole economic development question by the end of the budget year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That we need to do
I think we're
that.
probably going to circle back to every page.
Greg, do you have anything else to say? You've been very helpful.
I'm under economic development, but I'm really the city engineer. And the city engineer plays a role whenever a customer comes in and says, can I build here? We walk them through the process, but they don't have to stumble and learn for themselves. We give them the information on a particular lot, what's available for sewer and infrastructure, and there's a lot of folks not from Waterville that come to town that want to know what they can do with Weeks Lot, or what they can do with these other lots, and with zoning for this, what's the process of changing the zoning. So at the city staff level, we deal with a lot of customers every day, and 1 out of 10 perhaps goes and sees guys in Paul Warner. But 9 out of 10 are kicking the tires and trying to understand how to do business in Waterville. So,
like when I came up today, you and Ann both were talking with the fellow that owns the Hampton Inn.
Hampton Inn, he called me, he read the newspaper, he knows that there's a traffic light going at the end of Airport Road, and he wanted to know what the process was and how he can be involved in that process. There's additional raw land behind Dunkin' Donuts. So there are a lot of folks that come through our office that get information that may come back in a year or 2 after they understand. So once they understand how to get the information on the website, they can see the zoning map. The real concerns are how do we change the zoning? And how do we do things that are a little different than what the current thought process allows?
Greg, I'm not sure, especially the new councilors, understand what else you do. You're heavily involved in the airport and all the work you're doing at the airport.
Yeah, I inherited the airport back a number of years ago, and then I had to learn about the airport when Telford left. So Rosemary was involved.
You got that right.
At the same time.
We became two partners with our
Our initial concern was to find an FBO to take over where Telford left off, but we were not successful. We learned how to become an FBO. We realized early on in the process that the only way to sell the business was to sell a profitable business, a losing business, or at least a prospect of prospering. I think we're close at that point.
The big intersection project, Greg is very key on that.
The other thing that Greg has been involved in heavily is what's going on up in Orrington and Bangor. He's been our representative with PERC, and I never get the other group right.
The
I call it
MRC,
PERC,
the Municipal
MRC.
Review Committee.
Right.
So I was actually a voted director for the Municipal Review Committee at large, 187 communities. Served there for 12 years, was vice president for 5. Resigned that position because the direction that organization was going might not be the direction that Waterville is in the future. I'm pleased to say that we'll probably be seeing something in the next few months from that organization. I think the focus here is on what Waterville's interest in the new process.
And the other critical thing with the building projects we've done is having a city engineer on board with the police station construction, the fire station, revamping the library, opera house. So having an engineer on board really has been critical for building construction related stuff.
Well, and coming from the planning board, you're critical in that piece because you and Ann have to walk through these really, enormous plans for us normal folk and, and for the residents who come in and who are trying to build or look in Waterville, so.
I try to review other engineers' work, so it's a peer review for the city to look out for mistakes.
And Greg is a professional engineer, and the city charter requires us to have a professional engineer.
What though, Mike, did you tell us some time ago about, given that we've finished so many of the big projects, some thinking about maybe having Greg on a contractual basis, on hourly?
Actually, I brought that up first. I knew this budget was coming. I discussed it with Fred and Eric Thomas and Mike and said, is there a possibility? And then I took a look at running my own business, and you heard rates for IT is about $75 an hour. The going rate for engineering is maybe $90 an hour. If you wanted me 20 hours a week for 50 weeks a year, that's 1,000 hours. At $90 an hour, you're only budgeting 95 for total right now. You might as well get me for 40 hours a week instead of paying the same price for 20.
That's where we ended up in that whole analysis.
I'm still willing to continue to discuss that, but it just didn't make sense for what you were paying.
Well, and the other important thing from my viewpoint is, and I was in the paper today, with trash, I think it is going to be our #1 concern in the next 1 to 3 years. And having his experience.
You mean city budget, outside of like job growth and things like that?
Not just budget.
Yeah, outside of.
Waterville's the biggest concern.
How do we do it?
Yeah, for
Growing a
cities.
robust economy.
Yeah, for city services. Yeah, getting jobs is our #1 priority.
Getting tax money is our #1.
They go hand in hand, don't they?
One of the things I did when I was an MRC director is I got Josh and Remy to be voted in. I got Ken Fletcher to be voted in. I got a gentleman from Clinton to be voted in. So at the time when I was up there, it was 1 person from Central Maine and 8 people from the Bangor area that were on the board of directors.
Who's turning that around?
And we've actually had a strong representation. It doesn't mean we have a voting bloc, but our interests are not the same as the folks that are right next to the plant. Their transportation costs are nothing compared to ours. We have folks from Blue Bay Harbor that are partners in that.
We're not going to get into the whole trash thing.
I'm almost done.
Because we got the fire chief waiting.
Yeah. Well, this is the only thing I've had to say, Mike.
That's true, but I know what it's like when you get talking about trash.
The trash issue is going to come, and it's going to come before 2018, and it's going to mean we change the way we do things.
Drastically.
And the trash business is more difficult than the law enforcement business.
Other questions?
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I'm keeping your time.
9 years.
Page 16.
Whatever he wants, give it to him. I believe it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who voted you in?
Wow. Well, his increase, if you go to the bottom line of the fire department, is 3.7% increase, which is a pretty strong increase, but one other thing I want to make sure everyone, and we talked about this before, if you go back to the first page, page 16, and you look under the MSRS, which is Main State Retirement System, under benefits, it's 8th or 9th line down, there's a $53,000 increase in our Main State retirement costs. So the total fire department increase, bottom line, is $73,000. 53 of it is in that one item. And I think we talked about this before. We had a huge surplus in the Main State retirement system for fire and police, and we've been drawing that surplus down over many years, and we got to the end. And so now we're funding the Main State retirement system costs at actual, instead of being able to use that surplus that we had built up. So his budget and police both sustained pretty big hits. I think David did a good job as best he could under operations. I think our operations, which is that huge category, which goes on to the second page, that's down by how much, Chief? 20,000?
Yes,
From 639 down to 619. That's down about 20,000 in operations. So we tried to make up some of the loss in making cuts in operations. Hopefully we haven't left ourselves short for next year. There's always a question about vehicle maintenance. What's going to break down? Again, how much is it going to cost?
Story, rescue was out again.
Is that, wait, let's keep this on the budget, please.
It is a budget.
The rescue has been problematic with maintenance, and we didn't have an issue, needed an inspection sticker. It ended up being out of service for probably 2 weeks, and had to go to Roki and take a sticker, or it'll be very pricey. I haven't got the bill yet, but for the reason number.
And then the other big worry is the tower truck. We did quite a bit of work on that.
That was been pretty good, but there's a
4 years ago.
deadline looming that says that's now $1 million truck if you want to replace it. The city and the town of Winslow really want to keep their individual $1 million trucks, or if it's something that they want to share.
Have you connected with Winslow? Is that the discussion?
Very preliminary, very preliminary.
I mean,
I don't get one girl in the Winslow
he
Fire
doesn't make
Chief.
the decision on. You have to talk to the city.
Yes,
the
we,
city.
Yeah, that's what you meant.
Yeah.
Are the two tower trucks close in age, are they?
ours is a little older, and it's had more serious mechanical issues. They're just starting to get into electrical gremlins because they're in the rust belt.
And we typically
Yeah,
borrow back and forth anyway, don't we?
yeah,
Yes.
they all show up. Not well, pretty.
In some situations in the city of Waterville, it's good to have two trucks. We have some buildings that, surround.
You do need it, that's right. It's,
I mean, there's a difference between a Winslow stick and a tower with a bucket, the bucket is definitely.
in a building concern like Hathaway, all the residences up high, we're concerned about what we call scrub area, and that's what you need, 2 lanes for hospitals, along with another facility where 2 aerial trucks would be utilized as well. One open, one out. It might be a matter of sharing in reaching out with that.
Is there something that we need to do to help reach out to Winslow and have that discussion? Or is that started?
Oh, yeah, it started.
Okay.
Right, when Mike Kevin and I talk about the sharing of the chief, we've talked about equipment.
Would it
Yeah.
actually save the community more money to eventually regionalize Winslow and Waterville since we're sharing the chief anyway?
Depends on how you do it. And I'll give you my generic answer I say every year is, just putting two departments together isn't really gonna save anything. But if you take me off of the property taxes, give me a fire district, like the water district,
Which is before the
then
legislature.
I stop drinking out of the same Kool-Aid as the school department, police department, public works.
Right.
And that's how you save some money. But that politically is very difficult.
Very good.
We painted your fire trucks Winslow orange, and they're not great.
I mean, this isn't the first time. We've gone to Winslow before about sharing and they didn't want anything to do with that discussion.
We tried to merge the police.
They've been pretty good with the fire department, though, haven't they?
Just, well, because we have the liaison
saving
between
money on
the
the
two
chief.
That's a
departments, you know?
huge piece right
So,
there.
you know.
No
With-
question about it.
With mutual aid, it's almost as if it's one department now. I don't know, maybe I exaggerated a little bit, but any fire in Waterville, Winslow most likely responds. Any fire in Winslow, Waterville most likely responds. So it's kind of a shared department.
It almost works against regionalization, because I've heard the argument, why regionalize? It's like, if I need something, I'll just call for it. So why do you want to hardwire departments together?
No, fire on Pear Street had all the departments there, all the
We
regions.
did, yeah, everybody, Oakland, Fairfield, all of them. I mean, then you have other departments moving in like Vascular.
I think the savings are in equipment more so than personnel.
Is there, like, if power goes out to Oakland or Winslow, do we charge that?
No, the mutual aid agreement is,
Do we ever go anywhere else except Winslow? Sure.
It's the other ones.
Do we?
we've been to Vassalboro,
Fairfield.
Fairfield, well, yeah, we talked before about Benton.
Right.
We do send people out.
Do we? And I know we would, but I don't remember seeing that we have.
Yeah, we've gone out. It's, we consume, Winslow comes over a lot when we're busy, when we need extra manpower. And that's kind of my jab at them, as I tell them, that's why we're putting an extra lane on the bridge and a new rotary, so we can get the fire trucks in here fast.
It's interesting, Chief. Obviously, there's a difference where Winslow is paying their firefighters, but are we by any chance subsidizing towns that decide not to pay for firefighters? And then would they end up relying on places like
Or
Waterville
volunteer.
who do end up paying this big bill for the fire department?
My opinion is, I think Winslow is in a situation more so than Waterville because of the geographic area where
With the,
they head out of town quite often. There's a lot of ink in the newspaper right now. China Village, for instance, can only muster 2 suppression firefighters. Sydney is also having issues, from what I understand, hot and cold. Everything goes in cycles. It may very well be, in my pea-brain head, it's like if we did form a district, that it would be attractive for other communities to say, that's our best option, let's join the district, expanded the district.
Then you bill out to each community equally pro rata, is that what you do?
I believe that the model that I see is the chief, if you want to call him that, is more of an accountant that establishes value, that how much is the fire district going to need to meet payroll, to meet capital, everything that we worry about now is just a fee that gets charged.
That puts the nonprofits in the picture too.
Yes, it does, which is where your savings come from.
Right.
If you could imagine value-based that you have in the non-taxables now, that now becomes fair game for a fee. assessment.
Because they don't
There is a
pay for
bill.
fire protection now, but they pay for water, for instance, they pay for sewer, for instance.
And, we say, communities like Thomas and Colby will pay for their own private police department, but we're still at fire. We're the only layer that's out there.
Exactly.
But you'd be setting up a whole new governmental entity to have a
Rosemary,
district.
were you on the
Voluntary
council?
though, is the way the bill is written, I believe.
Towns can opt in or out.
I believe it's
Yeah.
discussed as
Oh,
going
yes,
voluntary.
voluntary, but if you say, we're gonna create a fire district, then you've gotta create an entirely new governmental entity that will do billing, collections, and all of that, so it's gonna be, so we'll take $2 million out of our budget, that's gone. Now the fire district sends out bills to every single homeowner in the city, you pay the fire district for your bill for fire protection, in addition to your property tax bill. So they've got to have now billing clerks, collection, so the devil's in the detail.
Pretty much they have to have
You
their
gotta
own
look at
accounting
the
department.
savings, how much you save with taxes, taxes are double.
The big thing is the nonprofits all of a sudden now get a bill,
What would that mean, two
Right, and
mills?
Based on square
and it's
footage.
big.
based on square footage, and that's big. But you gonna send the homeless shelter a bill?
Sure, why not?
Boys and Girls Club?
Other churches,
Thomas College, 2 AM fire alarms going off.
It's the devil's in the details.
And then is your facility ready? Would it be, I don't know if big is the right word for it,
That's
but
the question.
powerful enough to be able
I
to,
was trying to ask Rosemary, you were on the council when the fire station was built. Wasn't it built as a regional fire station?
It was built to act as a headquarters,
Public
but
safety
not to
area.
cover the whole.
I don't know.
That would be the hub. You would still utilize the resources available. For instance, if China wanted to join, China actually has 3 separate fire departments. You may want to utilize the stations and the equipment that already exists in China Village or Wheats Mills for that matter. That's kind of a reach for somebody that's worked out of this area for a while, but eventually, that's what's happening on the west coast. The fire districts are moving in and they're very successful.
Anyway. Back to the budget.
Questions on the budget?
So
Thanks,
vehicle maintenance, you can't really project how much you're gonna spend each year. Because, if, like, for example, with rescue, it goes out for 2 weeks. You're gonna be slapped with a huge bill that may not have been in the budget, so things like that, you can't really.
We usually remember.
Chief will tell you, when we looked at vehicle maintenance line, we looked at 3 years' worth of history to try to get an idea of what's it been. And it's been $50,000, close to it. It's 54 last year. I don't know, do you have a number as of right now for vehicle maintenance, what you spent? Chief? I see we're at 33.9 as of the end of February, or?
We're 39 now, I'm at 78% of my budget, and we're 75%
And
through.
you haven't gotten the bill for rescue.
Correct. So,
Yeah. We're gonna be at 50 grand.
Aren't you getting a new rescue truck?
It's in the capital. That's a discussion that I think we'll talk about a lot more.
It hasn't been audited yet.
No. I need some direction.
I thought it was on that
They
bond
do
issue.
that.
I thought it was-
It is on the bond issue, but he and I have talked a lot about the specs for a new rescue truck, because what you're talking about getting is a lot different than what we have today.
Smaller, probably, yeah.
I'm looking at almost exactly like what was the last for rescue now, except we have dual wheels in the back, it's a lot smaller. The last engine that we bought, we moved a lot of the extrication equipment and heavy equipment onto the heavier truck, which allows us to run a smaller, non-custom vehicle.
So actually, we've got to come back to this group, don't we, and ask for permission to buy, the way you're hoping to buy the rescue, which would not be in a straight bid process, right?
There's a fork in the road, and that is I can go out and buy a vehicle that the rescue techs want, and it's gonna cost $150,000 built custom. What I'd like to do, and what I have on the shelf is, my brush truck won't start. My brush truck used to be, it came into life as the airport crash truck. That's an old Dodge Power Wagon. It's dead. And what I would like to do is take my utility truck that we have now, that acts as a backup rescue, turn that into a brush truck, then replace the rescue and my utility truck, and I can do that for $150,000.
Is the rescue truck you have now worth anything, is that?
It is, but it's, I think if it came out offline, that the money we save on maintenance that we put into it would almost pay for the truck. It's maintenance-wise, it's been that hard. And when we talk capital, I can get all those numbers.
Yeah.
How many
So we've
days
got
it's
to
on.
return to this discussion. This is a,
Can't make 2 vehicles for the price of one.
any other things in your budget that, there weren't any other big changes, were there?
No, it's, we were heavy in personnel services and fringe benefits, and that's really, didn't have any control over that. And to help offset that, we basically took $20,000 out of the operating budget, which is tough, but I think we kind of had to do that. I think we can make that work.
We got a question.
Is there any difference in terms of,
So go ahead.
in terms of rehiring or any position changes at all?
I have a captain that's going to be retiring in July, early in July, so we will have promotions and a new hire that we're going to have to set up for. And that'll help save money.
Because we'll be graduating a higher priced person and hiring a lower priced person.
That's correct.
But bumping everyone else up and kind of making it up along the way.
We have a lot of youngsters.
I will say this, year after year, he's talked to me about his concern that on his shifts, it's a four-man shift. Back in 2004, it was 5-person. So when Paul LePage made cuts here, we lost 4 firefighters. So I know that's been a concern, but I have not put that extra person in the budget.
Wasn't that discussed last?
I don't know if we did or
I
not.
was looking at one day
If we
one
snap
day
ads on
person.
the truck, can we call it, we use tips and call it economic development?
Tim?
Depends on the ads, I think.
So anyway, I think you do a good job, very good job of what you have for personnel.
Question.
Yes, I was just curious, this hybrid rental really sticks out. It's a really big number, and so that means that the city does not own its own water supply?
That's correct. Kennebec Water District
Yeah.
covers that.
The only thing we can do about it, we
Yeah,
tried,
that's one of
and
those
the
things
PUC sets that
About
number.
every year.
We have
So
no-
his point has always been, why does my budget have to be inflated by 336,000?
Absolutely.
Either you put it here or you put it somewhere else.
Goes to the police department.
You do use the hydrants. So.
That we do. Oh, I know.
And Public Works get all the
That's
companies.
always-
That one, I loan.
So,
Ah.
and I'm sure you clean it out after every storm.
No, you guys come around there. You beat me to it, I guess, you're just so quick. I would.
Other questions? For Chief?
Thank
Thank you.
Thanks. So, next Tuesday's council meeting. This is not a recycling week, don't put it on recycling.